Welcome to the Success Files with the Traveling Finance Marketer, your shortcut to mastering finance. We chat with top experts, revealing their stories, tips and tricks to boost your career. Join us in navigating the financial world and don't forget to subscribe. Let's dive into the Success Files.
Welcome to our balcony. We absolutely love it here. It's where we do a lot of our work. It's where we have our coffee and pastry in the morning, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. In this episode, we have got Justin Campagna of Emergent Financial Group. He is the managing member. He has got a fantastic story, and his knowledge and the intellect is absolutely phenomenal. It'll be a great episode. Hey everyone, so welcome to our second episode of the Success Files. Today we have got Justin Campagna of Emergent Financial Group, and he is the managing member there. Justin, I'm really looking forward to this episode. We had an hour-long chat yesterday, and I was saying a couple of times throughout that episode that we should have recorded that. So I'm really looking forward to it. The amount of knowledge that you've got about just about every subject is phenomenal. So I think this is going to be a really good episode.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of the compliments. And I'm also looking forward to our next discussion.
Perfect. So we had, let's start off your early days. If we start off with your story that you started the conversation with yesterday, throwing everyone in at the deep end here. It's an equally interesting but sad story, but I think it frames the rest of your life. Would you say so?
I would agree. Yes. So I was 20 years old, and I was at Auburn University. I had a girlfriend, very attractive, very popular young lady. She was 21, and we were actually at the Auburn Georgia Tech game, and we were traveling back to Auburn. She had to go home to because she told my parents she had class, and she was kind of so innocent and pure that she essentially told my mom that she would go to this class that essentially she never really went to. She skipped frequently, so she had to be kind of, for appearance sake, she was really serious about making sure that she got back to Auburn to go to this class that she told my mom because it might affect her reputation adversely. Therefore, so Lauren, she didn't care about many things. She was like a very simple person, although complex in her own way, but she did care about a few things, which were something like her reputation and a couple other sort of things that mattered to her. So we headed back to Auburn, and she was driving. I was the passenger, and we got in a very significant automobile accident. And I ended up, essentially, my side took the damage. The car kind of flipped over and went inverted. And I took all of my side took the brunt of the injury. It compacted down to the window sill, the top of the 4Runner. And essentially she wasn't buckled in, unfortunately enough. I bought her a dog for her birthday, and we believe she was reaching back to kind of grab the puppy and put it on her lap, because we were 10 exits away from our destination, and she actually kind of got jettisoned out of the vehicle, out of the back seat, out of the back windshield, and she was brain dead and ended up dying officially at like 3-4 hours later. This is at 2 a.m. So I was in a coma for about a month. I woke up with a beard. And I also woke up with mouth potatoes in your mouth. It's actually kind of quite interesting. But when you don't brush your teeth, I guess, for a month, and just kind of have tubes and various salivas coming out of your mouth, you actually grow microorganisms in them, which I refer to as mouth potatoes. So I woke up with a beard, kind of just to put the audience in context in these mouth potatoes. And I asked my father, I was like, hey, what happened? And he said, you were in a car accident. And I was like, okay, well, I can't feel my legs. And he was like, well, it's because you're disabled. And then I was like, well, where was Lauren? And he was like, well, she died. And I was like, that's impossible, because I had this lucid dream that she was cuddling me. And I was like, that's impossible. She was just cuddling me. And he's like, I got teary eyed. My father never cried. And he said, that's so sweet, but she's dead. So for the next several, I guess, days or weeks, I was really trying to understand if that was real, because I mentioned that I had these lucid dreams, and I wanted to, was this the next lucid dream in like a sequence of 3 that I had? Was this the 4th lucid dream? Or was this real? So I just kind of thought it might be the 4th lucid dream, wishfully thinking. And then until I heard someone die next to me in intensive care. And when I heard this person die, I was like, yeah, this is very real. So I began to just kind of think and plan and strategize on how I could really kind of defeat this thing. And I figured out initially that I had I had a series of major tragedies, but the 2 largest tragedies were my disability. So just to kind of recap, I was disabled from the nipple line down completely, blind in my left eye because my optic nerve died I had 3 cardiac arrests. During one of the cardiac arrests, my optic nerve died. So just blind in my left eye. Also broke a series of bones, and also had a head injury. So no short-term memory for like, just to kind of give away the story the next year. And I think we talked about yesterday that so which one do you think people were most afraid of? The disability or the head injury?
The paralysis, I said.
Yeah, it's actually the head injury. Head injury is like, much worse. Your mind is a lot more valuable thing apparently than your body. If you believe in sort of the knowledge and wisdom of other human beings around you, and everyone perceives this, I believe. And even with the head injury, it was just so difficult for me to have any sort of like utility or a camaraderie with even my parents, that I saw my own parents sort of like to drift away from me a bit. But everyone was fine. They thought that they could kind of deal with disability. But the head injury was the deal breaker. So facing all of these things, I was trying to just by doing drills and rehearsing and getting people to question me, get my short-term memory back. I was also just thinking like, I have all these difficulties. How do I emotionally endure this? So I made the decision that I was going to deal with the paralysis and the head injury and just act like I never met Lauren and just erase her from my mind. And that's what I did, because I knew that the 3 of them together, I wasn't that strong. I wasn't strong enough, and it would break me. So I focused on those 2, gave myself goals, gave myself tasks, and I ended up getting my short-term memory back about a year later through just constant focus and sort of quizzes and just what's the score to the Auburn game? Who did Auburn play? We're Steelers fans. Who did the Pittsburgh Steelers play? Were they home or away? That sort of thing. Just, who came to visit you today? Just kind of just drilling myself, and was able to get it back. And then when that happened, really, I kind of went through the institutions, which was like a Shepherd Center, a spinal cord institution, and they wanted to make me the best sort of paraplegic that I could be in a wheelchair. I kind of thought that they were wrong, because that I could walk again, because I had this thing called proprioception through my feet. And proprioception through your feet is very important, because many people that have spinal cord injuries and they get a lot of things back, they don't have the proprioception through their feet. So they have to like look at themselves walking, which if you're trying to walk and you're bending at the waist and looking down, that sort of takes away the physics of why we walk upright, straight, and tall, right? So this is when I really started to understand that they didn't understand gravity either. They didn't understand that, like, they had us doing all of these, biking exercises and all these isometric leg movements and stuff like that. And I was like, these people, because they're not disabled, they're just physical therapists, they just don't understand how gravity like really affects the body at different angles. I was like, we're meant to, like humans, sort of like how birds are meant to fly most efficiently. We're meant to walk most efficiently as well. And, that's kind of facing gravity at the angles that's, most advantageous to our body. So essentially I was like, I should just be standing, and I should learn how to stand, learn how to crawl like a baby, get very good in standing, and walking is a series of stances and steps. You have the least resistance from gravity at that angle, versus being completely on your back, where you're kind of like a victim of gravity. or kind of pushing just with your legs on a bike where you're once again a victim of gravity. If you're standing and walking, you're just sliding your legs, sort of like just brushing against gravity at its least resistant point. And this was sort of the key to walking. That's why we do it as humans. I ended up just kind of going around to small, medium-sized business owner that was hungry and ambitious, very intelligent. I convinced her to work with me. And she had this whole core program. We combined the core program with my idea to just walk. And I spent about 7 years there total, 3 years just walking, like just trying to like the last 3 years, I just stood for 3 years. All my friends are getting married, they're having families. I'm just going to their wedding with my walker and I'm standing, like just getting good at standing. And all of these people thought that I was crazy, and I could hear them talking behind my back and all this stuff. And it just really just drove me, because I made it very personal, that these people didn't believe in me. And, how dare someone believe in me, which is just kind of more to how just I was raised. It's kind of one of my greatest strengths, which is something that I've learned. So I got so good at standing that I could stand anywhere. So we started working on the step process, and I began taking just steps, and I essentially got nothing back for 7 years. And then I began taking steps, and one step led to two, which led to three, which led to seven, which led to a hallway, which led to walking to the bathroom in the therapy center, which led to walking outside, which led to walking to the grocery store, which led to walking everywhere. And that happened in a series of like 3 to 4 months. So nothing for 7 years, everything in 3 to 4 months.
And I mean, you're an incredibly determined person. I got that from our conversation yesterday. And was it that thing of I've got to prove these people wrong? Do you think a lot of it was mind over matter?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what sort of makes us. That's what makes us really human, is our ability to think, and our ability to think with reason and logic, rather than just kind of using our instincts. So anything that we do, it's like we've created it. It ended up in just a series of thoughts, and the machinations, and that type of thing. And by thinking about something, spending the majority, that's our advantage, by spending the majority of your time just focusing and thinking about a concept or a problem and how to solve that problem. I think we've created, from the mud to the wigwam to the Roman Forum to the civilization, we've created all of these things through the power of thought. So I very much believe in mind over matter.
It's the same thing as sports people. I mean, this story is an anecdote over many, many years, and what I'm going to say is over the course of a few seconds. But it's the same as sports people who visualize, and that visualization builds up neuroconnectors, or whatever the correct terminology is, and that's what produces actual output. And that's how you can physically have a representation of something that goes on in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know with my own walking, it was a lot of visualization. It's weird because the main problem when you're paralyzed is that you don't remember what anything feels like. It's so weird. Your legs feel like they're dead, and you can't remember how to get into all of these familiar, these familiar muscle patterns, because you don't remember quite what they feel like. So you have to revisualize them and retrain and recondition yourself to remember these feelings and sensations that you rely on, and that you're comfortable with. But it's just getting back how does this work? Kind of planting this leg and swinging this leg. How do you even get there? It's that's why it was not feasible to start out with isometric leg movements. I mean, that could take you years to get something like that. And what are you going to win? Like a leg press competition? I mean, it's what's the goal, really? I mean, come on, you're rehabilitating disabled people. None of these people are competing in a leg press competition. What are we doing? So yeah, I mean, it's all visualization. And I think I was at, Auburn, of course. And I think through a lot of that visualization and problem solving, I developed these sort of neural pathways, I believe, because it ended up greatly increasing my intelligence and obviously wisdom. And I was able to transfer to the prestigious Emory University, and ended up doing that, transferring to Emory University. And before that, when I was rehabbing, I was just kind of doing some private equity with my father. So I had my first kind of starting your own business experience there. That was kind of a nightmare. It was 2010. We were doing primarily asset-backed securities, which is largely credit card receivables, which we were securitizing and then kind of selling them out in the marketplace. So when the mortgage-backed securities market went under and the economy went under, so did the asset-backed securities market. There's a lot of counterparty risk because like you're doing business with a broker, and then suddenly, you're called that broker and she left. She's gone. No one's heard from her in forever. It's a very unregulated market, so it's kind of like the Wild West. So yeah, that was a unsuccessful endeavor, but great experience. Went to Emory, ended up graduating in 2016. Began working with one of my friends there, and his parents or his father-in-law. And we ended up working on the merger between Optimization Petroleum Technology and Halliburton. So got a lot of great experience there. And then I got a job at a hedge fund, essentially hedging commodities and trading commodities and rebalancing ETF. From there, I got a job at Infosys McCambridge Systems. That taught me third-party administration, what it's like to be behind the back end of a computer, basically. It's just a bunch of humans on the back end organizing things because we're humans. It's what we do. We tell the machine what to do, and we organize the operations and the processing of the machine. So I got to do that. And then, as you know, TPA, third-party administration, is very important for, the pension world and the 401k world. So we did 409A administration, a lot of manual transactions. And then I worked at several brokerages, kind of learning the art of sales for the next several years as a financial representative. And then got to work at a registered investment advisory, where I sort of saw the $88 trillion market, which is the global pension market, and really saw that that's what I wanted to do. They were doing 33% of the Georgia K through 12 pension market. And I learned enough through kind of knowing what I knew about so many things and then seeing their operations. I guess I had the ability to pick up on somebody's business, how it works very quickly.
Apologies, carry on.
Yeah. So I was able to kind of pick up on what they were doing from the standpoint of like a registered investment advisory, and how that worked. So I don't know if anyone's ever seen The Big Short, right? But it was working in this RIA because they were institutional. They were over 100 million. They were around $1 billion. They had all these people kind of coming to visit them, like people from Goldman Sachs, people from Alliance Bernstein, all these major banks, and they would very much, just like in Big Short, they would take them out for dinners and not really shooting guns, but they would do whatever you wanted them to do, because these institutions like wine and dine these funds, right? So I saw that and I'm like, oh, I see what they're, that sort of revealed all the mysteries in finance for me. So I started Emergent Financial Group.
Amazing. So would you say that, well, you've worked in pretty much every facet of financial services. When you were younger, did you imagine you were going to go into this sort of area? At what point was it? How did you go from not being in financial services to working in every single area within the industry?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Interesting that you should ask that. I wanted to be an attorney. My uncle's an attorney. I wanted to be an attorney, very argumentative, very good sense of logic, and just probably like to overly communicate, and obviously compete. And I wanted to be an attorney, but because of the accident, I was in this legal dispute with a couple of large parties, automotive manufacturers, as well as insurance companies, and actually had to go to court. And my case actually is a Supreme Court case that I go to the Supreme Court to get heard, right? So I had this experience of dealing with all the insurance companies and seeing like what the contract behind insurance looks like why it's there legally, and how that binds and is like kind of the glue of the insurance industry, right? So I essentially, when we were in trial litigating, like our second day of trial, we were winning. They brought in this ringer. There was a really good attorney, he turned the entire trial around, but I saw that he was carrying like 5 or 6 boxes because that's what he was doing. And I was in a wheelchair. It's like, I can't carry 5 or 6 boxes. I have to do something else. I can't be, this bring your attorney that changed the case. I was like, I have to do something else. So I decided to get into finance at that point. I was like, okay, I'm going to take my legal mind and I'm going to learn economics and I'm going to learn finance, and then I'll be the best financial person that I could be because I'll also have a legal mind. And that was my next goal.
And you've still got a massive interest in the legal side of things.
Absolutely.
You're still constantly learning about it and finding out everything you can about that area because there's such what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of crossover between the two fields, and the legal knowledge can benefit massively, specifically in the insurance side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what you're not able to do from the standpoint of, again, human beings in a civilization with laws and a financial system and politics, which is the merger of the two. Okay. So really, I mean, if you're a financial person, you have licenses there. You're an attorney or can partner with an attorney, you have licenses there. You're creative and you understand this system. There's nothing you can't do. You're actively making the law. And if you have a problem with the law, you go to court and you prevent a clever case and you circumvent the law, right? Or, you sort of find a technicality for why you're in this gray area of the law. That's sort of the profession. I mean, that's the craft. And then, on the financial side, everything, money is very important. It's a medium of exchange. And you're handling this money. So I don't see, really what else is there. Everything else is just media. I mean, there's so many people who operate in the shadows who are like the truly powerful that you've never heard of because they don't want to be known.
Yep. Yeah, I'm a big believer of that in myself. And I find it bonkers that people go to university or college for 9, 10, 12 years to learn law, and they learn law studying it, and everyone's supposed to abide by those rules on a daily basis. If people have to go to law school to learn what law is for a number of years, how's the everyday person supposed to understand it themselves and abide by those laws that we're all governed by?
Yeah, I think really it's you have to develop, which is, my accident was very unfortunate, but it had a lot of fortunate outcomes because it's like we discussed yesterday. We're just human beings in the world. And if we were in the world back 80 million years ago, with saber-toothed tigers, like we wouldn't be, no one would have like ADD. They wouldn't have asthma because they'd be eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. Like it's just survival. Yeah. You have to survive. And, the easiest way to survive is by using our brain and developing critical thinking skills. Okay. And these critical thinking skills is something that I developed solving the problems of my accident. And I went to, fine school that developed them even more and taught me more about how to think. It's about teaching someone how to think and how to solve problems, and recognize problems and correlate things that can be correlated and things that are maybe specious, plausible but false, uncorrelating those things and kind of proceeding from there. It's basic like Platonian logic. So yeah.
It definitely feels like we're taking a step not to get into too sort of politics and sociology, but it definitely feels like we're taking a step back in terms of that critical thinking side of things. Society is it caters to people not having to think, and it's especially over COVID. We were saying yesterday that it's people become lethargic, and whether that's by design or as a natural outcome of what's happened over the last 2 years. But a simple thing of people not wanting to go back to the office, there's definitely a sense of lethargy these days. And like I say, I'm not sure if it's by design or as a result of what's going on, but It definitely feels that way.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that the sort of the world is meant for the brave, and you get something by getting a higher level of survival or reaching a higher level of civilization. Not a higher level of like pleasure, really. So I think that people need to be constantly, achieving things and visualizing things and have goals, and seek to accomplish these goals. And that's how you reach a greater level of like self-actualization, and figuring out who you are, what you can do, appreciating the adversity and the path to overcoming it, and appreciating that you're at this new level in this sort of game of life, this higher order of civilization, and competing on that level, and maybe getting sent back down into obscurity for a while, but finding a way to put yourself, we call it reinventing ourselves, to reinvent yourself. That's really the adaptability of survival, to continuously survive, moving upwards, to reach a higher level of civilization, which then everyone in society will copy and follow.
Yep. It's such a difficult thing to do with, inflation at an all-time high. I can't remember the exact statistics, but back in the 50s, the average house was like 2 times the average salary or something like that. And now it's what, 10, 12, 14? So
Yeah.
there's so much going against the everyday person that, yes, people do achieve things, and they can achieve things, and they can create something from nothing. But the cards are stacked so firmly against us that I think the everyday person just feels disenfranchised,
Yeah.
just completely disenfranchised. And it's a real shame as well, because having that thing of focusing on the light and working towards something bigger and greater, and having that excitement and enthusiasm is such a great thing. And I think that the vast majority of people would benefit massively from it. I mean, you mentioned ADD and ADHD, and I think a lot of that is because people are because they're disenfranchised. They haven't got anything to aspire to, or they believe they haven't got
Yeah.
something to aspire to.
Yeah. I mean, they're not really contributing to like a greater civilization. I mean, that's
No.
all you have is your legacy. Like that is all that you get is, I'm 39 years old. I get another 40 years and I'm nothing. I'm dust.
Mm.
Like you have to move. You have to do something. You have to continuously keep doing things and keep building and create dependencies. Like, as psychotic as that sounds, create dependencies. This world is about dependencies, and who is dependent on you. That's power.
Hmm. Yep.
You know.
And so, and so, I mean, case in point, the whole thing of creating something from nothing and having your back against the wall. I mean, you were literally paralyzed, and you spent several years in a position where you were, quite frankly, probably struggling. And that's an amazing story, and that I think that's something that everyone can learn from. That regardless of your situation. I mean, I was saying to Maddie recently that I saw this was years ago. I saw a video of some guy with, I think it was Australian. Anyway, he had no arms and no legs, but he was a public speaker, and he went around the world doing public speaking and all that sort of stuff. He seemed like the happiest person in the world, despite his obviously crippling situation. And the going back to the whole mind over matter thing, it's so important, and it's the one thing that keeps us striving. It's the one thing that keeps us spiraling from going into a depressive state. And I genuinely believe that having some sort of entrepreneurial curriculum in school, or something about learning life, is massively missing, and it's something that should be taught, because we're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. I mean, people get paid to solve problems, right?
Yep.
The issue in the world is that we're not solving more problems, and there's all this money out there, like Federal Reserve, central bank printed money, that's chasing fewer and fewer solutions to real problems, and that
Mm.
sucks. And that's why we're all very unhappy about
Yep.
it, right?
Yes. So, moving on to sort of the economy and all that sort of stuff. So obviously, there's the big thing at the moment is the debt ceiling, What's your make on this? Do you think it's all political circus? Do you think it's what do you make of it? Because
Well,
I'm a bystander of this. Obviously, I'm not in the US, but obviously, if there is a default, it's going to have massive knock-on effects and all that sort of stuff. So I've been keeping an eye on it, but I probably don't have the same level of understanding as yourself.
yeah, sure. I look at it as yeah, that's it's very much political theater. Because if you think about like what a nation is really just kind of serious. It's really valued by the assets that the nation holds, the ability to protect, and kind of use those assets to enforce their will on others, and the productivity of its civilization, its ability to create cash flow. Like that would be a nation's balance sheet. Okay, so if we ran into a large problem, and let's just say just war was off the table to control for war in this case, what we would do is we'd start selling off our assets. So if you think the debt ceiling is a big deal, it's really not, because like we could sell all these territories that we have in the South Pacific, for instance, and all over the world without even getting into selling a state, right? And you could raise enough money to pay your debts. I think it's kind of more political theater and kind of posturing to try to get our nation to really kind of think about the national debt, and because it's politically not feasible and politically impalatable to just say, hey, this printing money thing has created like a lot of bad situations. As politicians, we're going to stop printing money. They want to like plant the seed for that, and maybe some populace, the electorate's minds, and that's kind of just kind of more fear mongering. But I mean, we have, like, for instance, we have the United States has 22 aircraft carriers. Okay, that's I think that's like 8 more aircraft carriers than every other nation in the world, which is like 14 every other nation combined. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, we have a military, like I think our Air Force is like 3,000 planes, 22 aircraft carriers. There's like nowhere we can't be. I mean, if we need, if we really need money, we could steal it from whoever. Just not that I'm recommending that, but we could. And like power and money and economics is nasty. And however we would spin that, we would. Before we had like this debt ceiling, this like word or something, that came between us and our the continuance of our great nation. So yeah, I think that's a lot. Yeah, I think it's just kind of a lot of talk from just really really like a bunch of amateur politicians who aren't very good at what they do. I noticed that I worked a little bit for a lobbying organization, like as a volunteer, and I noticed that one party has tremendous grassroots and lobbying efforts and organization, which is very important on the grassroots. One party in the United States doesn't have any grassroots. They're doing nothing in my estimation, and they're also kind of the losers. That's obviously the right, and because they don't do anything. That's like they're not pros. Like they're not professional politicians because they're not working.
And yeah, I mean, it's like I say, to be honest, it's something that I haven't really got an opinion of because I'm not so. It's not something that I'm fully ingrained in. It's just as a fly on the wall, and being in the industry and the clients we work with, it's something I'm trying to keep an eye on. But I think you're right that even if there is a default, they're not going to, whoever they are, they're not going to let the economy go to shit fundamentally. I'm sure there's backups of backups of backups, regardless of every situation imaginable, whether it's regarding the economy, militarily, societally, whatever it is. I'm sure that every single scenario they've got a playbook for.
Yeah, well, what they're talking about, which is actually kind of the scariest thing, no one mentions this. It's sort of like a deep, dark kind of secret and higher levels. Is if you think about like global trade, you have all of these goods that are being traded around the world. Where these goods are nearest to its destination, where they're being like most heavily transacted, you need a bank. Okay, you need to have a bank. You need to exchange these goods for currency somewhere, or keep accounting of these goods and who knows what, where, why. So if all of the goods are being traded in like Southeast Asia, China, Malaysia, Vietnam, places like that, India, right? It would make sense that the central bank of the world would really be over there. It's just more efficient. So a lot of people understanding that are trying to triangulate a currency between Africa, Euro, US, South America to try to get the trade, try to make that those trade routes, more outstanding than what's happening in Southeast Asia. So there's talk of like a currency alliance going on there that would replace the dollar hegemony.
Yes, isn't there something like 22 countries that have expressed interest and 5 or 6 that have said, yeah, I'm definitely going. I think including France, I believe.
Yeah, there are. Like we also moved NATO. I think it was in like Stuttgart, Germany. That's also being moved to Nigeria. So that's like these are like so these are the small sort of things that don't make the news, don't make the headlines, that are very important. They're reported, but they're sparsely reported. They're very, very serious. Like, so why are we moving NATO, the entire air base, to Nigeria? Does that, just using basic logic,
I wasn't even aware of that.
Power?
It's again, talking of theatre, the media's all theatre anyway. We're not told, like you say, we're not told anything important. We're told what they want us to know. But like I say, I had no idea that NATO is moving to why Nigeria? Why there of all places?
I think from a logical geopolitical context, just the shifting the balance of power, and they need a large presence there because of what the Chinese has been doing with their one bridge, one road policy. I sort of personally heard from some high up Africans that they really kind of want the Chinese out of Africa. It makes sense. Like, you build a bridge and a road, but there's still these powers in this nation. You're a foreign source. You build them a bridge and the road, but you still have these foreign powers just kind of sitting there lying dormant. Or I'm sorry, these indigenous national powers, like in Africa, lying dormant. They obviously, in the game of power, they want to take your bridge and your road and get it for free, right? Particularly if they can like align that among their allies. So that very much looks like that's what's going on. They kind of want the Chinese out of Africa, and from a geopolitical standpoint, it's best for us to kind of, help them do that, as well as the Europeans. So I think they're moving the airbase down there to really kind of a show of force, to the Chinese.
Stick their flag in the ground.
Exactly. So like, yeah, we can be anywhere, over the subcontinent of Africa very, very quickly. And if you're some sort of a merchant in Yemen, the United States can protect you. You really don't need Chinese protection. The U.S. and its allies are here to protect you, and that's important for people.
Well, like we were saying yesterday, Africa's absolutely thriving economically. Like I say, it's not something I've looked into myself. As you know, we're in Mauritius, which is a little island off the east coast of Africa, and my friend here works in insurance, and he deals with all the African territories, and he says that there's such large misconceptions about the entire continent. And the economy is absolutely thriving via natural resources mainly, I believe.
Yeah. I know that when I've never been, but I know that that their biggest problem is transportation. Is that improved?
Well, we're on a little island where it takes an hour and a half to drive from south to north, so we haven't been to mainland yet. But it's a the continent's ginormous. I saw one of those. I've forgotten what it's called. It's a map, and it's a map that's to the actual scale of the Earth rather than a sphere that's been flattened. And I can't remember what it's called, but the northern hemisphere is a lot more squashed and smaller, and the continent of Africa. I don't know how true this is, but I think it's I think there's sense in it, but the actual land size of Africa is far greater than what we actually believe. So, if you've got a continent that historically has had poverty issues, you'd imagine that there would be transportation issues of some sort.
I noticed the same thing. I saw a map as well, and I noticed the same thing with Brazil and South America. The curvature of the Earth hides the vastness of like an Africa and a South America, because the Earth is curved and you can't really factor that in to any sort of like meaningful calculation. The curvature of the Earth kind of conceals the vastness of those two subcontinents. However, yeah, I what I learned about Africa is that trade was kind of fraught with difficulty there, because they have so much incremental issues that will wash away roads. And there might be a monsoon which like forbids trade on any of those roads for great length of time, and that can be very difficult and very challenging. And is that something that you've experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been here since January, and it's now May for anyone who's listening in the future. And we've already been hit by, I think it's either 2 or 3 cyclones. We haven't been hit directly, but Madagascar has been hit directly twice, and it's completely obliterated the whole of the island, and they haven't got the infrastructure to continuously build, properly fortified buildings, and it's an incredibly impoverished island as it is. And something I found out, which is absolutely boggling my mind, going off on a tangent about Madagascar,
Yeah.
is because of the film and the cartoons and the animals and all that sort of stuff, you'd think that it's mainly a place with very little population, but the population there is 28 million. It's and
Wow.
you think about it, you looked at it on the map, and it's actually a massive island. It's like a quarter of the east coast of Africa. Probably not a quarter, but it's massive. Yeah, I just found that interesting. But yeah, I think you're right. There's
How does it have 12 million people, but it still like has a prehistoric biome, from what I hear?
Sorry, what's that?
I hear that Madagascar is the last place like in the world that has a prehistoric biome. Like there are literally creatures from the prehistoric period in Madagascar that you can find nowhere else. And it maintains the prehistoric conditions for survival, because it's an island, essentially, like near, I guess, the heart of the activity and what was once called Pangea, essentially.
Yeah. Well, there's they think that's where we all came from, specifically Madagascar, not Pangea. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right that I'm not sure about the entire continent, but there are weather issues that really the locals suffer from as a direct result of it. So yeah, transportation, trade, all that sort of stuff is going to be massively impacted. And they just haven't got. I don't think they've got the infrastructure to continuously take on that level of bombardment from various weather issues.
So how do you get from Madagascar to the main continent?
No idea. I'm not sure the distance from the mainland to the thing. Like I say, we're northeast of Madagascar, but I'm not sure. I'd imagine there'd be flights and boats and all that sort of stuff. I'm not sure specifically, and I'm not sure the frequency.
Are there large ports in Madagascar?
Like I say, I'm not sure. I know so little about the island that I came to the realization when I found out there was 28 million people on the island, I was completely blown away. So I think my expectations versus reality are a little bit skewed.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I mean, I guess that's essentially the problem. Is you have like all of the goods which are being manufactured in China, right? Mm-hmm. They go easy like across the Pacific. They get to the United States. Across the Indian Ocean, they would get to Africa. Then, one more jump either direction. And, you get to you kind of get to like South America, right? Just kind of going on the opposite coast. So it seems like China's, maybe on the global perspective, is the most ideal place for trade because of its location.
Yeah, well, I think the center of the Earth's landmass is Egypt. I think it's literally where the Great Pyramids are. I think that's one. I mean, there are so many absolutely mind-boggling things about the pyramids and the way they're built and the size and all that sort of stuff. But I think they're literally built directly on the central landmass of the Earth, which is interesting. But I think you're right that as an outpost for trade, I don't think you can get any better than China.
Yeah, so basically, it's interesting what you said about Egypt, because that's actually how that. So that's kind of how how the civilization developed. Was the grain was kind of gleaned in Africa. It traveled along the Nile River, made the Egyptians the superpower. Eventually the Romans, kind of conquered the Egyptians, took that grain route, found a better way. They built roads, right, to get it out to the rest of the, the developing and, now developed world. And, that's evolution. Like the Emperor Augustus Caesar, he's like the wealthiest man to ever live, because I think he had like a third of like global GDP. That was his, which was grain. That was like his wealth. So yeah, it's just interesting to think about how things develop. They develop by people building new transportation. So I think in that sense, to kind of bring it back around to Africa, it's great that people are kind of taking a chance there and trying to develop new trade routes and transportation throughout that, very vast and barren, desolate subcontinent with a lot of problems.
I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know what the exact population is, but it's a massive territory, a massive continent with loads of unique opportunities for trade, and it makes sense. It doesn't make sense, in fact, that it hasn't been looked into or having proper established trade there sooner, considering the vastness of it. And talking of the world's the most the person with the most wealth historically, I'm not sure if did you say it was Augustus?
Sorry.
But there was another guy in Africa. I can't remember where specifically, possibly in the northwest, in one of the territories, like hundreds of years or thousands of years ago. Again, I'm going off some vague memory here, but I think he owned like 3/4 of the Earth's gold or something like that at the time. His wealth was absolutely mind-boggling. He just because of his control over the global reserves of gold at the time.
Yeah, I mean that's I think it's like Manchu or something like that. But he's like, yeah, he's the guy that basically had that traveling empire that he like took it to Egypt. And I think he got like as far as India. His economy was, can't remember the details, but it was like really interesting. It was like a nomadic economy, and he moved his entire herd and his treasury, which was his gold supply, throughout Africa up to Egypt, and then like into the Middle East. And like enriching and making and improving all of these poor areas, because he brought all the world's gold there. And he got as far as the Middle East, and like and essentially creating civilization and children, right? And he got as far as the Middle East, and I believe he at that point he was kind of up in his years, and there was some dissent in some parts of the Africa, I guess the southern part of his empire, and he had to kind of start coming back, to kind of quell that rebellion, bring all the gold and the treasury back to that, focus. And somewhere along the way he died. But it's interesting how an economy works.
And also what I find fascinating is that you can move a whole community of people, including a huge amount of gold, food, resources, water, whatever it may take to move that civilization across such vast land masses. It boggles my mind how they even did that. the simple thing of the transportation of the actual thing. What did they build to actually move it? How did they move it? Were there predefined distances that they traveled per day to how did they know that there was going to be water on it? It boggles my mind the level of ingenuity that they had in those times. I mean, if I was it, if I had to go to the south of the island, which is an hour and a half drive away, if I didn't have a car, how am I going to do this? Yeah, they move across continents with huge, vast quantities of people, and
Yeah, I think you kind of got back to our initial point. They did it because they believed in their ability to solve problems. They knew that they couldn't foresee what was in front of them, but they might have sent scouts to give them some notice. But they thought that their goods and services and their ability was world class. That it was the best in the world, and no matter where they traveled, they could enforce their will and improve, these various other areas of the world because they believed so fully in their skills and ability to advance civilization. And that's the way of thinking that everyone should have, because that's the way that the greatest people think, and they take the risk to kind of go to these unknown parts with these different variables that they have no idea, but they just have some sort of internal confidence that their ability to survive is so much further along than everyone else's that it will happen.
Yeah, I mean, as we were saying yesterday, risk is something that's lacking at the moment. Like I said, people in an office, they don't want to move their chair because they're comfortable in where they are, and yet it's surprising that when you're talking about enterprise and the people who move needles historically, there isn't actually much difference in their mentality between what's happening then and what's happening now. It's the same thing of thinking bigger than you're currently than your peers, trying to achieve something greater than what's currently available, and that mentality of the greatest minds hasn't changed really.
No, I mean all the greatest ideas are found in history. I mean, you can literally just understand human history and its various phases and how economies and politics works, and kind of its relation to survival, and you can sort of just implement a lot of things that they've been doing historically, and they would be enormously influential and applicable to today's society. Like one of the greatest years that the United States had was like 1905. I think it was the crossroads of where we had the oil industry, its downstream operations, that was kind of fully developed. So we went from kerosene to oil. We had electricity, just came on market. So, every house was like electrified at that point. We had financial innovations, which people were trading, bonds, largely stock and companies was just being invented. We had automobiles. We went so quickly into automobiles. And then, the first aircraft, airplanes were being flown. So that's sort of like the miracle year when I think even Einstein, developed the theory of like relativity in 1905. So I mean, that's like, yeah, it's like one of the greatest years of civilization. And you could just study 1905 and all of its various actors and learn so much about the world and in the modern world and what works.
That's really interesting. I have to look up about that. It's the first time I've heard about that. So, to change the subject a bit, let's talk about you and your career a bit more and where you are and all that sort of stuff. In terms of what you've achieved, what if you were talking to someone who was new into the industry and finance and they wanted to at a simplistic level, grow their assets under management, or excel in what they do and grow in what they do, what would be your recommendation?
I would recommend that they not focus on prestige. Early on in my career, I got caught up in prestige. You go to a prestigious school, you're going to work among the best minds. I noticed that there's a lot of people that are focused on the prestige versus to kind of, I guess, call out a couple of industries. That would be the hedge fund and venture capital industries. A lot of bright people there, that chasing the same 5% of the economy or 5% of assets under management globally. You kind of want to find, no matter how intelligent you are, the least competitive industry, and you want to plant your flag there. And either you'll dominate it or you'll figure out how to make it a better industry.
Okay, interesting. So essentially niche down, find a community of people that aren't as catered for, and plant your seed there.
Yeah, I mean, because there's no way. Maybe I'm just not a very intelligent individual, but there are levels of intelligence, and they get very complicated very quickly. And there's a lot of disparity. And some of the most intelligent people that I've met, they have photographic memories on top of didactic memories, and they just remember what they see. And there's other people that might be like your physicist, and they have a mind that just can account for physics in their mind and gravity, which is just probably entirely boring to continue discussing. You can imagine a mind that can account, that's just seeing the world and perceiving it, and gravitational forces in physics. It's I'm not going to ever get there, right? So you gotta find some people, because I'm not the brightest mind in the world. I might be in some upper quartile or something, but I have to find some way where I can use my intelligence and find a problem that I can solve. And that's not going to be in theoretical physics.
Well, that's it. Like you said, at the end of the day, money follows problem solving. If you can solve a problem that's great enough, affluence should follow, assuming there's a good enough level of tenacity and action being taken. But I think we touched on it yesterday, that there's because I talk with quite a lot of financial advisors and wealth managers all the time, and generally speaking, they fall into two camps. There's the camp that want to have a relatively easy life. They want to take that percentage of the assets they manage. They want to enjoy their life in addition to their vocation. But then there's the group who are completely dedicated to what they're doing, and it's something they live and breathe, and they make additional sacrifices above and beyond what other people do. And it's really weird how binary it is. What's your opinion on that? Because I think you've got some strong opinions there.
Yes. I that's how I started out my career. A tremendous mistake. I wanted to be that person that was able to time the market or be the best trader in the world. And what I found out is that it's not what people with a lot of money can do. I mean, how do you trade $1 trillion? They say the House of Windsor, they own 1/6 of the world's real estate. How do you get rid of that? They're just stuck with all of this real estate, that they can't convert to cash ever, because they can't dump 1/6 of the supply of real estate on the market in a person's lifetime. So it's the same sort of thing. The nascent trader that is an undergrad that just graduated, that is in his first career. Where does he think that's going? Does he think he's going to manage $1 trillion in assets and make some derivative strategy that turns out into $16 trillion overnight? It's not how that works, right? So I would say just to, again, not focus on so much the prestige. It's good to learn how to hedge. It's good to learn how venture capital works. It's good to know those people. It's good to be able to speak that language, behave yourself in sort of a gentlemanly, thoughtful manner among those people. They do have very valuable connections. However, you need to focus more on what that business is sort of doing. So trading would be the brokerage business. How does the brokerage business make money? Trading is just a small part of the brokerage business, but focus on the brokerage business, how the brokerage business is making money, because it's likely a much better way than that trader's making money. Because most traders actually blow up no matter how big they trade, because like no one, your emotions and your logic just can't be that separate. And eventually you get overconfident and you try to stretch your ability to trade and your advantage and, arbitraging a market, and it doesn't work out for you, and you blow up a $6 billion account and you turn it into nothing. That happens to all traders.
Does that happen? Does that happen frequently then?
Yeah, it happens quite frequently. Yes.
Because I can imagine there's a certain level of confidence in that demographic who go into those types of roles. You build, like you say, you build up your confidence, you start earning money, you get a bit bolshy and overconfident. And
so the system's design, the essence of trading is literally hey, I've got all these clients, they want to be in the stock market. Here's all of their orders. What a trader is supposed to do is take their orders. I want to buy Google at 900 and they 20 shares, and they go into the market and they buy 20 shares for this client in an account. That's like what a trader should be doing, in the stock market. Like they're not really supposed to, go out and be making all of these derivative trades unless they can hedge it like properly. And that's only a certain amount of people. I mean, the way that we used to trade in like the futures market is maybe you see two markets with different prices, but they're essentially, it's the same commodity. So you can exploit those two different prices with that same commodity, as long as you account for transportation, and that's an arbitrage. That's pure trade. That can work, but they have some of the brightest minds in the world working on that arbitrage. And what they're doing is understanding supply routes so well and transportation costs, they can make that arbitrage profitable. So once again, you have a lot of bright people focusing on this like small amount of, arbitrage or wealth. So my recommendation would be to understand as much about the systems as you can, and then as much as you could about the nuance of systems, and kind of really focus on and finance. You're like the front of the house, which is sales, the middle of the house, which is sort of like the operational core, and the back of the house, which is the administrative. Like focus on all three houses, really work in all three houses. Then you would have the knowledge, understanding that was sufficient to build a business.
Interesting. And so something I spoke about with Joe in the last episode was mentorship and learning. And how do you approach the learning of things? Because you've got a very broad knowledge of a variety of things. How do you accumulate that knowledge? Where does it come from?
Yeah, it's a good question. So how I approach it, I'm someone that I have enough confidence in my ability or my ability to adapt new skills that I will tell people all that they can understand, really. I give out free knowledge. I have no problem giving out free knowledge. I somehow, somewhere deep inside my, my complex personality, I do this because if they compete with me, well, that would just take me to my next level. And I'll have to learn a new skill to beat this person. So it's just the result, and people are different. It's just a sort of a result of my own, like, I guess, security. But there are a lot of people out there that are very successful that are insecure sort of people. And they're your black boxes that won't show you anything, because they're very insecure in the fact that you might learn what's inside this black box, and now you're their competitor. And I understand both sides of the market, but like both sides of that insecure and that secure personality. I happen to be the secure personality, but I just wouldn't succeed being the insecure personality because of my morality. But I understand that there are problems. The secure personality is they're enabling their competitor. The insecure person's like creating, they're creating a lot of animosity and resentment in a competitor, and you can, just essentially fuel a very valuable enemy either way, that ends up competing with you relentlessly. So, I understand both sides of it, but I'm more of the sort of teach a man to fish. I just believe that that's what promotes the greatest like welfare, and I'm more of a civilization advancer. I think the civilization should advance, and I think that it's very remarkable that we got a lot of black box people out there, and civilizations aren't advancing.
True. That's very true. Justin, I hope you don't mind, but shall we call it a day now?
Yeah.
Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I can tell there's so much more we could talk about. Like I say, we had an hour conversation yesterday. We've had this conversation today, so I'd love to have you on the episode again. If someone's interested in learning more about you and what you do, what's the best way of getting in touch and finding out about your firm?
Sure. Yes. So again, Emergent Financial Group. Either type that in or go to www.efg-investing.com, and that's where you can really get a good view of our website and the business, and the benefits that we provide to small and medium-sized business holders and owners, as well as personal wealth management clients.
Amazing. Justin, thank you so much for that, and I'm really looking forward to having you on again.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Success Files. Don't forget to take our free financial business health check at theonlinegrowthco.com/health check to identify growth opportunities in your practice. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate and review the show. Until next time, keep pushing forward and unlocking your full potential. This is the Success Files, signing off.